The message contained in this video is so urgent, and the things relating to it are happening so quickly that I've not taken time to add many graphics to this video. This video primarily relates to recent and current developments in China and in Kenya in particular, but the implications are frightening and virtually unavoidable for the rest of the world as well. Although worldwide response could slow things down a little, the end result of what is happening now in those two countries will be catastrophic for the entire planet. Now, in an effort to avoid hysteria and exaggeration, I'll try to briefly but accurately report what is happening. Through the use of RFID microchips, millions of closed-circuit TV cameras, and computerized records of every citizen over 5 years of age, these countries together have made giant leaps towards total control of their entire populations, including now control of their buying and selling. Rampant human rights abuse in China in particular give us a chilling picture of what could lie ahead for those of us who now profess faith in God, especially in light of recent news reports that Chinese businesses around the world working under supervision of the Chinese Communist Party have been spying on us personally, as well as installing spyware in computers and other security installations all over the world, including a high percentage of government bodies. There has been growing evidence of abuse in the handling of private information, in business transactions, and in such things as program breakdowns in computerized devices in order to force consumers to replace them after their warranties expire. The general public, however, has come to accept this as the price we have to pay for the convenience of the internet. But now we could be facing wholesale slaughter of various groups who are being seen as threats to existing governments. So I'll try to put some of these pieces together for you now. Please stay with me in order to get the full picture. Other videos on this channel explain the so-called social credit system which exists in China today. This is a surveillance and control system on a scale the world has never seen before. The Chinese government monitors people's use of the internet, their buying and selling patterns, and their movements and interactions through millions of CCTV cameras throughout the country. For example, they recently made it a requirement that churches install cameras inside their buildings so the government knows who is making use of the buildings and what is said in their sermons. If the government deems someone a threat or doesn't like their behavior, then those people get low social credit points, and they're restricted in such things as how far they can travel, how much access they have to the internet, and in rental and job opportunities. Even having contact with someone who has a low social credit rating is enough to lower your own rating as well. And they even advertise the names of people with low social scores so that other citizens know who to avoid if they want to protect their own scores. Now remember, China is known to torture and kill tens of thousands of its own citizens, in particular peaceful Falun Gong meditation practitioners, and selling the organs of the executed prisoners to overseas patients who are looking for organ transplants. Now most of us in the West have grown complacent. We have little fear that this could ever happen in our own countries. But now there is growing evidence that China has virtual control over internet security around the world, through spy activity organized by such huge corporations as Huawei, so that they themselves could choose to target those of us with whom they have strong disagreements, especially if their economic control of the world continues to grow at its present rate. And we need to remember that any government can start out sounding safe and then change. Putting this kind of power into the hands of any government gives them the opportunity to abuse it. And that is what we see happening in Kenya at the moment.
My administration will complete a central master population database, which will be the authentic single source of truth on personal identity in Kenya.
Ironically, while China calls its surveillance system a social credit system, Kenya's new Huduma ID card is called a social card. because it is being used for far more than personal identification now. Information like records of police checks, which are known as good conduct certificates, are included on the Huduma cards as a way of identifying a person's social desirability. And the card goes even further. It identifies which ethnic group the person belongs to and how much land they own. It even has provisions for including specific coordinates to locate the land, and provisions for collecting such biometrics as voice recognition. Something to keep in mind with this is that Kenya has a serious problem with ethnic tension, particularly when it comes to elections and illegal land grabs. Having ethnic information and land ownership on an ID card makes minority groups particularly vulnerable to extreme discrimination. And this Huduma card is described by the government as the
single source of truth
for every citizen in the country, which almost gives a spiritual quality to the card. But what is most disturbing about this card, and what is the primary message of this video, is that unlike other national ID cards, the Huduma social card is also a banking card. The government claims in its brochure that the main purpose of the card is to provide a cashless transaction scheme for its population, particularly targeting the unbanked population. Now, while there are claims that the Huduma card itself is not being forced on anyone, it will be mandatory for any monetary transactions with the government, whether it is receiving welfare benefits, paying for vehicle registrations, or even replacing a SIM card in your mobile phone. It can also be used as a regular bank account, including doing withdrawals from ATMs. Surviving without it is already unthinkable for most people. And here's another disturbing fact. The use of the card will be overseen jointly by both the government and the banks. Now that's a significant step towards totally merging the economic and political aspects of population control. The brochure provided by the Kenyan government unashamedly admits that it will be highly beneficial to both of them. This is what it says. Card issuing authorities are the government and the banks. Governments and banks are expected to cooperate as these social programs are highly beneficial for both parties engaged. There's very little mention of benefits to the citizens other than convenience and a chance for people to have banking who would not have otherwise needed it. So all it would take is the elimination of cash completely and a shift of this technology from a card to the body in the hand or forehead, and we will have exactly what the mark of the beast is described as in the Revelation. In fact, even now, the card provides for biometric identification through the right hand or forehead in the form of thumbprints or face scanning. And with most forms of ID involving biometrics, the two work together. Now, usually one must always have the card on them, but promotional information for the Huduma social card, which is being produced by a company called X-Infotech, refers to citizens needing either the card or biometric identification, and not to them needing both.
Every time I travel, access government services, or make a payment, I need an ID document or biometric credentials to verify my identity.
So the card itself appears to be only temporary, with plans to replace all the information on it with some kind of biometric identification a little further down the track. And that is where we need to give serious thought as to where this is all leading. A thumbprint or a facial scan can be used for identification already, and these are in the right hand and in the forehead. But if government and bank files are to be kept up to date, they need the information that so far is only included on the card to go with a thumbprint or facial recognition. Look closely. This is where that information is stored. It's called an RFID chip. Technology is already available to implant this chip under your skin in a capsule about the size of a grain of rice. And more advanced technology may even make it smaller. So what I am saying here is that this implantable RFID chip is the mark of the beast. It is already here, and we are just one very small step away from implanting it under our skin, thus fulfilling exactly what the Bible says about the mark of the beast. Here, let me read what the Bible says. The beast forced all people, great and small, rich and poor, free and slave, to receive a mark on their right hands or on their foreheads, so that they could not buy or sell unless they had the mark. Revelation 13:16-17. This beast, spoken of in the Revelation and elsewhere in the Bible, is a totalitarian dictatorship which gains control of all opposing governments and then sets to wipe out Christians in particular on a scale which is greater than any other previous persecution in the history of the world. The Bible is very clear that anyone with faith in God must never take this mark. It says, if anyone receives the mark on their forehead or in their hand, they will drink the wine of God's fury, which has been poured full strength into the cup of his wrath. They will be tormented with burning sulfur in the presence of the holy angels and of the Lamb, and the smoke of their torment will rise forever and ever. Now keep in mind that 100 years ago, it would have been unimaginable that such a mark could ever exist, much less be imposed on the entire population of the world. Consequently, people came up with all sorts of weird theories about what it represented, none of them ironically having anything to do with actually buying and selling, something they all believed could only be done with money, that is, with coins and currency. But more recently, we have seen huge changes in economics, where it is now possible for governments to implement something which perfectly matches the description of the mark of the beast in the Bible. The precursors, plastic money and electronic transfers, have progressed slowly, but now we are very close to seeing the actual mark itself, the RFID chip, being enforced as the only way to survive in a country like Kenya. Now, some people have no problems with flirting with this mark, arguing that just holding it in their hands is not the same thing as having it implanted in their hands. And maybe they're right, but at least in Kenya, it's becoming more and more clear that once everyone is sufficiently addicted to using the chip for all transactions, the government will have no problem at all getting everyone to accept the overwhelming convenience of that final step, of just getting it placed in their hand. So where do you stand on this? How close are you going to get to the actual implant before you start to question your overall dependency on all the precursors to it, including money itself? Infotech, the company making the Huduma cards, has projects in over 40 countries with big plans to expand into 4 continents this year, and there are quite a few companies competing for the same market. It is going to affect all of us soon. We can't keep running away from what is coming. We on this channel are experimenting now, in obedience to what Jesus taught his own disciples about living in a country where people do not work for money and where the ruler himself provides for our material needs. That country, of course, is called the Kingdom of Heaven, and the ruler is God himself. We are now approaching the ultimate showdown between God and the rulers of this present evil world. God is looking for people who will take a stand for him by walking away from the system and its control over us. We don't have easy answers, but we have been operating largely outside the present economic system for quite a few years now, and we are actively searching for answers in the teachings of Jesus for all that lies ahead. So please contact us if you would like to become a part of this great cosmic experiment of real faith in Jesus Christ. God bless you.